Chapter 9. Time suspended itself as Isabella stood face to face with the impossible. The black wolf, massive beyond anything nature should allow, regarded her with terrible intelligence. Its silver-tipped fur seemed to absorb the moonlight, giving it an ethereal quality that only emphasized its otherworldliness. Droplets of moisture clung to the thick fur, creating a constellation of tiny stars across its powerful body. Part of Isabella's mind, the rational, logical part that had carried her through law school and into the DA's office, was desperately cataloguing explanations. A large dog breed, a wolf-dog hybrid. An exotic pet escaped from some collector's private menagerie. But those explanations crumbled beneath the weight of those eyes, aware in a way no animal's eyes should be. They assessed her with an unmistakably sentient, almost human consciousness. Isabella felt her worldview shifting, realigning like tectonic plates around this new, impossible reality. Her hand trembled slightly, the first visible sign of the terror coursing through her veins. She'd spent her life pursuing truth, building cases on evidence and facts. And now, she stood before something that defied everything she thought she knew. Her gun remained steady, aimed between those eyes, though her law enforcement training had never covered this scenario. The wolf made no move to attack. It watched her, its massive head lowered slightly, as if assessing her threat level. Its breath emerged in small clouds in the cool night air, the rhythm unnervingly measured and deliberate. The scent of it reached her, wild and musky like forest floors, and something metallic underneath. "Back up!" Isabella heard herself say, her courtroom voice emerging automatically in crisis. Her words seemed small in the narrow alley, absorbed by the brick walls and the creature's dense fur. "Just back up." The wolf's ears twitched at her voice, triangular points of black velvet rotating to catch her words. It took a step forward, its massive paw landing silently on the wet concrete. Water droplets splashed outward from the impact, catching moonlight in their brief arc through the air. Something about its movement, the deliberate placement, the controlled power, suggested calculation. "I said, stay back." Her voice cracked slightly, the first hint of her carefully controlled panic breaking through. The wolf paused, tilting its head in what almost seemed like consideration, a gesture so human that Isabella felt her stomach lurch with its cognitive dissonance. Rainwater dripped from its muzzle. The standoff might have lasted seconds or minutes. Isabella couldn't tell. Her mind was racing, calculating survival odds that seemed increasingly dismal. Then, from somewhere beyond the alley, came a snarl that raised the hair on the back of her neck. The sound cut through the night, raw, aggressive, territorial, reverberating off the brick walls of the narrow space. Another wolf? The black wolf's head snapped toward the sound, ears forward, body tensing like a coiled spring. Every line of its powerful body conveyed alertness, recognition, and what seemed impossibly like concern. Its muscles bunched visibly beneath the thick fur, preparing for action. A blur of russet fur crashed into the alley. Another wolf, smaller but still unnaturally large, its coat a deep reddish brown. It slammed into the black wolf with shocking violence, jaws snapping at the larger animal's throat. The impact created a sound like thunder in the confined space, flesh against flesh, muscle against muscle. The alley suddenly filled with motion and sound, overwhelming in its intensity. "Jesus Christ!" Isabella gasped, pressing herself back against the brick wall until she could feel each brick against her shoulder blades, rough and unyielding. Her weapon remained raised, though the gesture felt symbolic at best. She didn't trust she could hit one without also hitting the other. The two massive beasts collided in a fury of teeth and claws, their growls echoing off the brick walls, creating a terrifying cacophony. The sounds were primal, visceral, ripping snarls, bone-deep growls, the impact of bodies colliding with force that should have broken bones. Isabella pressed herself against the dead end, weapon still raised, but now uncertain where to aim as the animals became a whirlwind of motion. Rain fell harder now, turning the concrete slick and causing both creatures to occasionally lose footing, claws scraping for purchase with a sound like nails on a chalkboard. The black wolf recovered from the surprise attack, with frightening speed rising to its full height and meeting the russet wolf's aggression with controlled power. Their battle moved with impossible fluidity, quick, precise movements, almost choreographed in their deadly efficiency. Water sprayed around them with each impact, creating a shimmering mist that caught the moonlight, turning the brutal contest into something almost beautiful in its terrible violence. Blood spattered the concrete as claws found purchase, dark droplets flying in crimson arcs. The metallic scent of it filled the alley, sharp and visceral, mixing with the musk of the wolves and the petrichor of rain on concrete. The russet wolf was faster, darting in with quick strikes before retreating, while the black wolf fought with methodical precision, each movement calculated for maximum impact with minimum exposure. As they circled and lunged, Isabella recognized patterns beyond animal instinct. These movements were tactical, strategic. The russet wolf targeted vulnerable points, throat, hamstrings, belly, while the black wolf used its superior size to force its opponent into increasingly disadvantageous positions. Water pooled around their paws, turning pink with blood as they fought, creating slick patches that occasionally caused one or the other to adjust their footing. "This isn't happening," she whispered, her brain struggling to integrate what her eyes witnessed. This cannot be happening. The logical framework of her world, the structure she'd built her life and career upon, crumbled beneath the weight of tooth and claw. The concrete reality of her life, evidence, facts, logical progression, seemed as insubstantial as the rain mist now filling the alley. A vicious exchange left the black wolf with deep gashes across its flank, dark blood matting the silver-tipped fur. The wound steamed in the cool air, the heat of the blood creating wisps of vapor that curled upward before dissipating. Isabella saw the injury register in the wolf's eyes. A flash of what looked unmistakably like pain, followed by determination. The injury seemed to trigger something in the larger animal, a shift in tactics. Its next attack came with renewed ferocity, no longer measured but overwhelming. Sensing the change, the russet wolf attempted to retreat toward the alley entrance. Its claws scrabbled on the wet concrete, seeking traction as it tried to turn in the narrow space. The black wolf anticipated this, cutting off the escape with a mighty leap that positioned its massive body between the smaller wolf and freedom. The jump covered an impossible distance, launching from one wall to another in a display of strength and agility no natural wolf could match. What followed was brutal efficiency. The black wolf caught the russet one mid-lunge, powerful jaws clamping around the smaller animal's shoulder with a sickening crunch of bone and tissue. The sound was visceral. The crack of bone, the tearing of muscle, the high-pitched yelp of pain that followed. The russet wolf gave that yelp, twisting desperately to free itself, paws scrabbling against the concrete futilely. Blood sprayed in an arc across the brick wall, leaving a crimson pattern like modern art. Isabella watched, frozen in horror and fascination. The envelope containing her informant's evidence lay forgotten at her feet, having slipped from her jacket at some point during the battle. The paper was darkening in the rain, water seeping through the manila material. Her weapon remained trained on the battling creatures, though she made no move to fire. Some instinct told her that intervening would be suicidal, like stepping between two freight trains on a collision course. With a final, powerful shake, the black wolf released its opponent. The movement was so violent that Isabella heard vertebrae crack in the russet wolf's neck, though not enough to kill. The russet wolf stumbled, favoring its injured side, blood matting its fur in dark patches that glistened wetly in the dim light. For a moment, it seemed ready to continue the fight, a snarl rumbling from deep in its chest. But then its gaze shifted to Isabella, standing with her back against the brick wall. Isabella felt the change as clearly as if someone had spoken. The wounded animal's focus had shifted from its opponent to her. Its eyes narrowed, calculating, reassessing the situation with disturbing intelligence. The look in those eyes was unmistakable. Hunger, calculation, the assessment of easier prey. Steam rose from its open mouth as it panted, blood dripping from its fangs to mingle with the rainwater at its feet. Something changed in the wounded animal's posture. It feinted toward Isabella, as if considering a new target. Easier prey than the formidable opponent it faced. Its muscles bunched, preparing to lunge across the small space separating them. The black wolf's response was immediate and unequivocal. It positioned itself between Isabella and the russet wolf, a deep growl rumbling from its chest that vibrated the air that Isabella felt in her bones rather than heard. The brick wall against her back seemed to tremble with its force. The message needed no translation. She is not yours to touch. The russet wolf hesitated, calculating its chances. Blood dripped from its wounded shoulder to form a small pool on the concrete. It snarled once more, a sound filled with hatred and the promise of future violence. Then backed slowly toward the alley entrance, its eyes never leaving the black wolf. At the corner, it turned and fled, the sound of its retreat fading into the distance. Heavy splashes marked its passage before it disappeared into the night, leaving only the scent of blood and wet fur in its wake. In the sudden silence, Isabella became acutely aware of her breathing, too fast, too shallow, and the thundering of her heart against her ribs. The rain continued to fall, gentle but persistent, creating a soft percussion on the concrete. The black wolf remained focused on the alley entrance for several long moments, as if ensuring its opponent was truly gone. Its sides heaved with exertion, steam rising from its body in the cool air. Then, slowly it turned to face her. Isabella's finger tensed on the trigger. The wolf was injured, bleeding from multiple wounds across its flank and shoulder, crimson droplets falling to the concrete with hypnotic regularity. The blood mixed with rainwater created pale red streams that ran toward the drain near her feet. That should have made it less dangerous, but something told her the opposite was true. Injured predators were unpredictable, desperate. Before he had abandoned them, her father had taken her hunting once, his sole contribution to her education. and had impressed upon her that nothing was more dangerous than a wounded animal. But the wolf made no move to attack. Instead, it took one step toward her, then another, its movement now careful, almost gentle, like someone approaching a frightened child. Its paws made soft splashing sounds in the puddles forming on the concrete. "Stay back," Isabella warned, her voice steadier than expected. Years of facing down intimidation in courtrooms had given her the ability to project confidence she didn't feel. The words hung between them, clear despite the soft patter of rain. The wolf paused, tilting its massive head. Those amber eyes studied her with a seemingly impossible expression on an animal's face. Consideration, recognition, and assessment. Raindrops clung to its fur, each catching the dim light, creating a silver mantle across its powerful frame. "I don't know what you are," Isabella said, surprised to hear herself speaking to it as if it could understand. Her voice echoed slightly in the narrow alley, bouncing back at her from wet brick walls. "But I am not your prey." Several times in her career, Isabella had faced armed suspects and experienced the unique tension of life or death moments. None had prepared her for the eerie sensation of communication passing between her and this impossible creature. A sense of mutual assessment, of boundaries being established without words. The air between them seemed charged with meaning beyond language. The wolf took another step forward, blood dripping from its wounded flank, leaving a trail of dark droplets on the concrete that quickly diluted in the rainwater. Its eyes never left hers, holding her gaze with unsettling intensity. Stray droplets ran down its muscle like tears, dropping from its chin to join the small streams forming at its feet. "I will shoot," Isabella said. The lie came easily, a necessary deception in a world of impossibilities. Her clothes were damp now, the light rain gradually soaking through, adding a physical discomfort to her psychological distress. The wolf stopped. Then, deliberately, it lowered its massive body to the ground in front of her, head resting on its paws in a posture that seemed calculated to appear non-threatening, though its size made that impossible. The gesture was unmistakably intentional and communicative. Water pooled around its body, soaking its underside, but it seemed indifferent to this discomfort. Isabella kept her weapon trained on it, mind racing through options. The alley entrance was clear now. She could potentially edge around the wolf and make a run for it. But instinct told her running would be a mistake. Predators chased fleeing prey. That was hardwired into their nature. Keeping the gun aimed at the wolf, Isabella slowly crouched to retrieve the fallen envelope. Her knees protested the movement, muscles stiff from adrenaline and exertion. The paper was soggy now, rain soaking through and likely damaging the contents. But she couldn't leave it behind. As she straightened, the wolf's eyes tracked her movement, but it remained in its submissive position, waiting, watching. "I'm going to leave now," Isabella said, feeling absurd for speaking to it as if it could understand. Yet the intelligence in those eyes suggested it might. The rain plastered her hair to her face, droplets running down her cheeks like tears. "Just stay there." The wolf made no move to stop her as she began edging along the wall, maintaining as much distance as possible between herself and the massive creature. Step by careful step, she approached the alley entrance, never taking her eyes off the black wolf. Her back scraped against the rough brick, catching on her blouse, but she barely noticed the discomfort. Her boots slid slightly on the wet concrete, forcing her to move cautiously. She was nearly at the corner when the wolf rose suddenly to its feet, water cascading from its fur in silver sheets. The movement was so unexpected after its stillness that Isabella gasped, a slight sound of fear escaping before she could control it. Isabella froze, weapon still raised, finger instinctively going to the trigger. Every muscle in her body tensed, ready for fight or flight. Blood was pooling beneath the animal now, its injuries more severe than she'd initially realized. The crimson liquid formed patterns in the rainwater, spreading outward in diluted spirals. It took one staggering step toward her, then another. Before its legs seemed to give out, the wolf collapsed onto its side with a disturbing human whimper, a sound of pain and resignation that transcended species. The impact sent water splashing outward, droplets catching the dim light in momentary beauty before falling back to the concrete. Isabella hesitated. Self-preservation urged her to run and get as far from this impossible creature as possible. But something else, curiosity, compassion, or perhaps the simple human tendency to witness the extraordinary, kept her rooted. She needed answers to understand this new reality she'd stumbled into. The wolf's body began to contort. At first, Isabella thought it was a death spasm, some final convulsion. But then the transformation became unmistakable. Bones shifted beneath the skin with audible cracks that made Isabella wince in sympathetic pain. The sounds were visceral. Wet popping, grinding of bone against bone, and tearing of muscle and sinew as the body rearranged itself. Limbs elongated, paws stretching into fingers and toes with sickening fluidity. The silver-tipped fur seemed to recede into the skin, changing texture and color before her eyes. From black pelt to pale human flesh, glistening with rain and blood. "Oh my God," Isabella whispered, lowering her weapon unconsciously, her mouth dry with shock. The Catholic school education of her childhood offered no prayers for this moment. The rain continued to fall, and indifferent to the impossibility unfolding before her, drops struck the transforming creature with the same rhythm they struck Isabella herself. The transformation was neither quick nor graceful. It was agonizing to witness, a brutal reorganization of matter that defied biology and physics. The creature made no sound throughout the process, though its face, gradually becoming human, was contorted in pain, teeth clenched against what must have been excruciating. Steam rose from the body as it changed, the heat of transformation meeting cool night air in visible reaction. Isabella watched, unable to move or comprehend what she was seeing. There was no precedent for this, no framework in which to place it. The world as she understood it did not allow for this reality, yet it was happening before her eyes, undeniable in its visceral detail. Where the wolf had been, a man now lay naked on the concrete, his body marked with deep gashes that bled far too much. The rain washed over him, creating pale streams of diluted blood that ran toward the drain. His face was turned away, but even in the dim light, Isabella recognized the robust build, the dark hair now matted with blood and rain. Mikhail Volkov lay unconscious at her feet, his naked body shivering as blood pooled beneath him on the cold concrete.